My name is Navaya. I'm 35 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been raising my daughter Emma completely on my own. Right now, I'm sitting in this cold lawyer's office staring at a document that's about to change everything. My grandfather Joseph just passed away last week, and I'm here for the reading of his will. My hands are shaking as I hold this paper because what I'm seeing doesn't seem real. $3.5 million. That's what my grandfather left me. The same grandfather who was the only person who believed I could raise Emma alone when everyone else, especially my ex-husband Tyler, said I'd fail miserably. I can feel my phone buzzing nonstop in my purse. 23 missed calls from Tyler. Somehow he already knows about the inheritance, and I can only imagine what's going through his mind right now. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever felt underestimated as a single parent, and subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, what my ex did when he found out about this inheritance will shock you to your core. I need to take you back to the beginning to help you understand how I got here. I was born and raised in a working-class family in Atlanta, Georgia. My parents worked their hearts out just to make ends meet. Dad worked construction and Mom cleaned houses. Money was always tight, but we had love, and that seemed to be enough back then. I met Tyler when I was 23 years old at this little bar downtown, after work one Friday night. I was there with my girlfriends just trying to unwind after a long week at my receptionist job. Tyler walked up to our table, and I'll admit it, he was exactly my type back then. Tall, broad shoulders with this charming smile that could light up a room. He worked for a construction company and had this confident way about him that drew me in immediately. Those early dating days felt like a fairy tale. Tyler would pick me up from work, bring me flowers for no reason, and tell me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He had this way of making me feel special, like I was the center of his universe. We'd drive around Atlanta in his pickup truck, windows down, music playing, talking about our dreams and plans for the future. After 2 years of dating, Tyler proposed to me at Stone Mountain during sunset. It wasn't fancy, but it felt perfect at the time. We had a simple wedding with our families, nothing too expensive because we were both still struggling financially. Tyler's construction job paid decent money when he could get steady work, and I was still working as a receptionist at a dental office. But even during our engagement, there were small red flags I chose to ignore. Tyler would complain about money constantly, always worried about bills and expenses. He started suggesting that maybe I should quit my job once we got married, saying he could take care of us both. At first I thought it was sweet, old-fashioned even, but looking back, I realized he wanted control. When I got pregnant with Emma, Tyler seemed excited at first. He'd put his hands on my belly and talk about teaching his son how to throw a football. But as the pregnancy progressed, and the reality of having a baby set in his excitement turned into anxiety about money, he'd come home from work stressed, complaining about doctor bills and baby expenses we hadn't even incurred yet. It was around this time that my relationship with my grandfather Joseph became really important to me. Grandpa Joseph was a successful real estate investor who'd built up a nice portfolio of properties over the years. He was tough, no nonsense, and had incredible business sense. But with me, he was always gentle and supportive. When I introduced Tyler to my grandfather, I could see immediately that Grandpa Joseph didn't approve. Tyler would get defensive whenever my grandfather asked him questions about his job or his plans for supporting a family. After dinner that night, Grandpa Joseph pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. "That boy ain't good for you, honey. Mark my words. A real man doesn't get intimidated by simple questions about providing for his family." But I was young and in love, or at least I thought I was. I defended Tyler, telling my grandfather he just didn't understand Tyler's situation. Looking back now, I realize my grandfather saw right through Tyler's charming exterior to the weak man underneath. As my pregnancy continued, Tyler's behavior became more erratic. He'd come home late smelling like alcohol, saying he needed to blow off steam after work. The confident, charming man I'd fallen in love with was slowly being replaced by someone bitter and resentful. He'd make comments about how expensive babies were, how our lives were going to change, how he wasn't ready for all this responsibility. Emma was born on a cold February morning after 14 hours of labor. I'll never forget that day. Not just because my beautiful daughter came into the world, but because Tyler wasn't there when it mattered most. He'd gone out drinking with his buddies the night before, saying he needed one last night of freedom. When my water broke at 3 in the morning, I had to call my neighbor to drive me to the hospital because Tyler was passed out drunk and wouldn't wake up. I labored alone for hours, calling Tyler repeatedly. He finally showed up 6 hours after Emma was born, stumbling into the hospital room, still smelling like beer. His first words weren't about our daughter or asking if I was okay. He looked at the medical bills on my bedside table and said, "How much is all this going to cost us?" The first few months of Emma's life were the hardest of mine. She was a fussy baby who had trouble sleeping, which meant I was up all night every night. Tyler would complain about the crying keeping him awake, saying he needed his sleep for work. More often than not, he'd grab a pillow and go sleep on the couch, leaving me to handle everything alone. Money became an even bigger issue after Emma was born. Tyler lost his construction job when the company downsized, and instead of immediately looking for new work, he spent his days drinking beer and watching television. He'd blame me and Emma for his problems, saying the stress of being a father was affecting his ability to work. The breaking point came when Emma was 3 months old. I'd been up all night with her because she was running a fever and I was exhausted and worried. Tyler came home around 2 in the morning, completely drunk, slamming the door and stumbling around the apartment. Emma started crying from the noise, and I rushed to comfort her. "This kid is ruining everything," Tyler shouted, his words slurred and his face red with anger. "We can't afford this. I can't live like this anymore." I stared at him in shock, holding our crying baby against my chest. "She's your daughter, Tyler. How can you say that about your own child?" That's when Tyler completely lost it. He started throwing things around the apartment, knocked over a lamp, and threw our wedding picture against the wall, shattering the glass. Emma's cries got louder, and I ran into the bedroom with her, locking the door behind us. I sat on the bed, rocking Emma and crying myself, listening to Tyler destroy our living room. Finally, everything went quiet. When I came out an hour later, Tyler was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. "I'm done with this," he said without looking up. "You think you can handle everything so well. You think you're such a perfect mother. Fine. You can raise her yourself if you think you're so smart." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Tyler, please, we can work this out. We can get counseling. We can figure this out together." But Tyler was already standing up, heading toward the bedroom. "I'll be out of here by morning. You can have your precious baby all to yourself." He packed his bags that night while I sat in Emma's nursery, holding her and crying. True to his word, he was gone when I woke up the next morning. All he left behind were divorce papers on the kitchen table and a note that said, "Good luck raising that kid alone. You'll come crawling back when you realize how hard it is." I called my grandfather Joseph that morning, sobbing into the phone. He drove over immediately, took one look at the destroyed apartment and the divorce papers, and pulled me into the biggest hug. "That sorry excuse for a man did you a favor, sweetheart," he said, wiping my tears. "Now you and Emma can build a real life without his poison dragging you down." The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Tyler didn't fight for custody, didn't ask for visitation rights, and certainly didn't offer to pay child support. He simply signed the papers and disappeared from our lives, or so I thought at the time. Being a single mother with no income was terrifying. I had to find work immediately, but childcare was expensive and my options were limited. I ended up taking 2 part-time jobs just to make ends meet. In the mornings, I worked at a local coffee shop from 5 a.m. to 11 a.m., and in the evenings, I cleaned office buildings from 7 p.m. to midnight. My saving grace was Mrs. Patterson, my 75-year-old neighbor, who offered to watch Emma during the day for a fraction of what a daycare would cost. She was a widow whose own children lived far away, and she fell in love with Emma immediately. Without Mrs. Patterson, I don't know how I would have survived those early years. My monthly budget was razor thin. Rent for our small 1-bedroom apartment was $800. Emma's formula diapers and baby food cost about $200 a month. Utilities were another $150. Between my 2 jobs, I was making about $1,400 a month, which left practically nothing for emergencies or unexpected expenses. There were nights when Emma would get sick, and I'd have to choose between taking her to the doctor and paying the electric bill. I remember one particularly bad night when Emma had a high fever, and I sat up all night putting cool washcloths on her forehead because I couldn't afford the urgent care visit until I got paid again. My grandfather Joseph would help when he could, usually showing up with bags of groceries or new clothes for Emma. He never made me feel like Charity, always saying Emma was his great-granddaughter and he wanted to spoil her a little. Those visits meant everything to me, not just financially, but emotionally. He'd sit on the floor playing with Emma, telling her stories about when I was little, making both of us laugh. When Emma was 2 years old, I ran into Tyler at the grocery store. I was in the baby food aisle comparing prices and using coupons when I heard that familiar voice behind me. Well, well, look who's struggling along all by herself. I turned around to see Tyler standing there with a woman I didn't recognize. He looked exactly the same, maybe a little softer around the middle, but the same arrogant smirk I remembered. Still struggling alone, he continued loud enough for other shoppers to hear. Told you it would be tough. Maybe you should have listened to me when I said you couldn't handle this. Emma was sitting in the shopping cart playing with a small toy, completely innocent of the tension around her. I looked at this man who was supposed to be her father, who had walked away from both of us, and felt nothing but pity for him. I didn't say a word. I simply picked up the baby food I needed, kissed Emma's forehead, and walked away. But I could hear him laughing behind me, and I knew other people were staring. The humiliation burned, but it also fueled something deep inside me. That night, after I put Emma to bed, I sat at my tiny kitchen table and made a decision. I was going to prove everyone wrong, especially Tyler. Emma and I didn't just survive. We were going to thrive. The turning point came a few weeks later when Emma said her first word. Not mama like I'd been hoping for, but book. She was pointing at one of the children's books my grandfather had bought her, and she said book as clear as day. I cried happy tears that night because I realized my little girl was smart, curious, and perfect just the way she was. By the time Emma turned 3 and started preschool, I finally had a little more flexibility in my schedule. Instead of working 2 demanding part-time jobs, I was able to focus on building a better future for both of us. I enrolled in evening classes at the local community college to get my associate degree in accounting. My days became even longer than before, but for the first time since Tyler left, they felt purposeful. I'd work at the coffee shop from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., pick up Emma from preschool, spend the afternoon with her doing homework and playing, then head to classes from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. 3 nights a week. My grandfather Joseph was incredibly supportive during this time. When I told him about my plan to get my accounting degree, he immediately offered to pay for my tuition and books. At first, I resisted not wanting to take what felt like charity, but he sat me down and explained it differently. Nevaeh, this isn't charity. This is an investment in my great-granddaughter's future. The better education you get, the better life you can provide for Emma. Let me help you help her. The 2 years I spent in school were grueling, but Emma was my motivation every single day. She'd sit at the kitchen table doing her preschool worksheets while I studied for exams. Sometimes she'd climb into my lap and help me with my homework, which usually meant coloring on my accounting worksheets, but I didn't mind. Those moments were precious. When I finally graduated with my associate degree, my grandfather Joseph was right there in the front row of the auditorium, holding Emma on his lap and cheering louder than anyone when they called my name. Emma clapped her little hands and shouted, "That's my mama." The pride I felt in that moment was indescribable. Within 2 months of graduation, I landed a position at a small accounting firm in downtown Atlanta. The starting salary was $35,000 a year, which was more money than I'd ever made in my life. For the first time since Tyler left, I felt like Emma and I might actually be okay. With my new job came the ability to move to a better apartment. We found a 2-bedroom place in a safer neighborhood, and Emma finally had her own room. I'll never forget the day we moved in, and Emma ran from room to room shouting with excitement about having her own space. That night, I tucked her into her new bed in her new room and felt like I'd accomplished something truly meaningful. Emma was thriving too. She was doing exceptionally well in kindergarten, reading above grade level, and showing an aptitude for math that reminded me of my grandfather Joseph. Her teachers constantly praised her intelligence and curiosity, and I felt so proud knowing that despite all our struggles, I was raising a smart, confident little girl. It was around this time that Tyler unexpectedly showed up at Emma's school play. Emma was 5 years old and playing a flower in the spring concert. I was sitting in the auditorium recording everything on my phone when I saw him slip into the back row. After the performance, as parents were mingling and congratulating the children, Tyler approached us. Emma didn't recognize him hiding behind my legs as the stranger tried to talk to her. "Looks like you're doing okay," Tyler said, his tone slightly less condescending than I remembered. "Didn't think you'd make it this far." I kept my arm protectively around Emma and replied simply, "Emma and I are doing just fine, thanks." He studied Emma for a moment, and I could see him trying to find resemblances between them. "She's gotten big, looks smart." "She is smart," I said firmly. "She's reading chapter books and doing multiplication. She's amazing." Tyler nodded awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the reality of having an actual conversation about his daughter. After a few more minutes of stilted small talk, he left, and I hoped that would be the end of it. Later that week, my grandfather Joseph called to check on us as he did every Sunday evening. "I always knew you had it in you, sweetheart," he said after I told him about my promotion at work and Emma's achievements at school. "Emma's lucky to have you as her mother. You've given her something no amount of money can buy. A mother who never gave up." When Emma was 7 years old, my grandfather Joseph had a massive stroke while working in his garden. I got the call from his neighbor and rushed to the hospital, bringing Emma with me because I couldn't find a sitter on such short notice. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life since Tyler left. I spent every day at the hospital watching my grandfather fight for his life. Emma would sit quietly in the corner of his hospital room, coloring pictures to hang on his wall and reading him stories from her school books. On his good days, Grandpa Joseph would hold Emma's hand and tell her stories about when I was her age. He'd talk about how proud he was of both of us, how much we'd accomplished together. During one of our last real conversations, he squeezed my hand and said, "You've made me so proud, Nevaeh. You and Emma are everything that's good in this world. Take care of that little girl." When he passed away 3 days later, I felt like I'd lost not just my grandfather, but my biggest supporter and closest friend. Emma cried for days, not fully understanding death, but knowing that her great-grandfather, who told her wonderful stories and brought her presents, wouldn't be coming to visit anymore. The funeral was simple, just the way my grandfather would have wanted it. There were dozens of people there, business associates and friends, who spoke about his integrity and generosity. Emma and I sat in the front row holding hands and crying together. About a week after the funeral, I received a call from Mr. Henderson, my grandfather's attorney. He asked if I could come to his office to discuss my grandfather's will. I assumed there might be a small inheritance, maybe enough to set up a college fund for Emma, but I wasn't prepared for what I was about to learn. Henderson's office was one of those traditional law offices with dark wood paneling and leather-bound books everywhere. I sat across from his massive desk, feeling nervous and small, while he pulled out a thick folder. "Mrs. Nevaeh," he began formally, "your grandfather was very specific in his instructions. He wanted to ensure that you and Emma would be financially secure for the rest of your lives." He opened the will and began reading the specifics. My grandfather's house in Buckhead, valued at $2.8 million. His savings account with $500,000. His stock portfolio worth another $200,000. The total estate was worth $3.5 million, and every penny of it was left to me. I sat there in complete shock, unable to process what I was hearing. "There must be some mistake," I whispered. "I can't accept this. It's too much." Mr. Henderson smiled kindly. "Your grandfather was very specific, Mrs. Nevaeh. He spent months planning this will. He wanted to ensure Emma's future and reward you for the incredible job you've done raising her alone." The drive home from the lawyer's office felt surreal. I kept checking my rearview mirror as if someone might be following me to take back what couldn't possibly be real. $3.5 million. Emma and I would never have to worry about money again. Emma could go to any college she wanted. We could live in my grandfather's beautiful house with the big backyard Emma had always loved visiting. But as I was pulling into my apartment complex, my phone started buzzing. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. Then it buzzed again and again. By the time I parked the car, I had 15 missed calls from him. I knew that somehow word had gotten out about the inheritance. In a city like Atlanta, news travels fast, especially news about money. I sat in my car for a few minutes, Emma sleeping peacefully in her car seat, and I realized my peaceful life was about to get very complicated. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Emma asked sleepily from the back seat. "Are you sad about great-grandpa Joseph?" I wiped my tears and turned to smile at my beautiful daughter. "I'm sad about great-grandpa, but I'm also happy because he left us something very special. He wanted to make sure we'd always be okay." But even as I said those words, I knew Tyler wasn't going to make this easy. I'd seen that look in his eyes at the school play, the way he'd calculated Emma's value when he realized she was smart and doing well. Now, with $3.5 million involved, I knew he'd be back in our lives whether we wanted him or not. Tyler didn't waste any time. The very next evening, as I was helping Emma with her homework at our kitchen table, there was a loud knock on our apartment door. Through the peephole, I could see Tyler standing there in a crisp white shirt and dress pants, looking more put together than I'd seen him in years. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door, not bothering with pleasantries. I heard about Joseph's will. Emma's doing homework, I replied, keeping the door mostly closed. This isn't a good time. Make it a good time, Tyler said, his voice carrying that familiar edge of entitlement. $3.5 million changes things, Nevaeh. We need to discuss what's fair. I could feel my heart pounding, but I kept my voice steady. There's nothing to discuss. The will was clear. Tyler pushed past me into the apartment, and I reluctantly closed the door behind him, not wanting to create a scene in the hallway where Emma might hear raised voices. Mommy, who is that man? Emma whispered, looking up from her math worksheet with curious eyes. Just someone Mommy needs to talk to for a few minutes, I said, guiding her toward her bedroom. Why don't you go play in your room for a little while? Once Emma was out of earshot, Tyler's demeanor completely changed. Gone was any pretense of civility or fatherly concern. This was purely about money. That money should be shared, he announced, as if he had any right to make such a declaration. Emma is my daughter too. I have rights. I stared at him in complete disbelief. Where were you for 7 years? Where were you when Emma had pneumonia last winter? Where were you for her first day of school, her first lost tooth, her nightmares, her scraped knees? Tyler waved his hand dismissively, as if 7 years of abandonment was a minor detail. I made mistakes, I admit that. But I'm still her father, and you can't keep my daughter's inheritance from me. Your daughter's inheritance, I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You walked away from her when she was 3 months old. You've never paid a penny in child support. You didn't even know what grade she was in until last month. Tyler's expression hardened, and I could see the manipulation starting. Look, Nevaeh, I know I wasn't perfect. I was young and stupid and scared, but that was then. This is now. I want to be involved in Emma's life. I want to be the father she deserves. Every word out of his mouth was a lie, and we both knew it. This had nothing to do with being a father and everything to do with money. This isn't about Emma, I said firmly. This is about $3.5 million. You wouldn't be here if my grandfather had left me $350. Tyler's mask slipped completely, then revealing the selfish, greedy man underneath. You're damn right it's about the money. Do you have any idea what that kind of money could do? What kind of opportunities it could provide? Emma deserves better than this crappy apartment and your hand-me-down clothes. Emma is perfectly happy, I shot back. She's healthy, she's loved, she's excelling in school. She has everything she needs. She needs her father, Tyler said, playing his last card. And I have legal rights. I can take you to court. I can fight for custody if I have to. The threat hung in the air between us like poison. I could feel my hands shaking, but I refused to let him see how scared I was. Get out of my house, I said quietly but firmly. Emma and I were fine without you before, and we'll be fine without you now. Tyler headed toward the door but turned back for one final shot. You'll be hearing from my lawyer, Nevaeh. That money belongs to Emma, and I'm her father. We'll see what a judge has to say about that. Bye. After he left, I sat on my couch shaking, feeling like my entire world had been turned upside down again. Emma came out of her room a few minutes later and climbed onto the couch beside me. Who was that man, Mommy? She asked again. He seemed mean. I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. That was your father, sweetheart. Emma looked up at me with confusion. My father. But I thought my father went away when I was a baby. He did go away, I said carefully, and now he wants to come back. Do I have to see him? Emma asked quietly. I don't think I like him very much. That night after Emma was asleep, I called Mr. Henderson's emergency line. I knew I needed legal advice, and I needed it fast. The next morning, I was sitting across from Miss Rodriguez, the family law attorney Mr. Henderson had recommended. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s, who specialized in custody cases involving absent parents. Let me be clear about something, Ms. Rodriguez said after reviewing my case file. Tyler's position is extremely weak legally. He voluntarily relinquished his parental rights, never paid child support, and has had virtually no contact with Emma for 7 years. I felt a small wave of relief, but Ms. Rodriguez wasn't finished. However, she continued, that doesn't mean he can't cause problems. Desperate people do desperate things, especially when this much money is involved. He'll probably claim he wants to reconcile with Emma and be a real father now. Over the next few weeks, Tyler did exactly what Ms. Rodriguez predicted. His lawyer filed a motion claiming that Tyler had matured and stabilized and wanted to establish a relationship with his daughter. They argued that the inheritance proved Emma deserved both parents in her life to help manage such a significant financial windfall. The whole thing was ridiculous, but it was also terrifying. I had to take time off work for meetings with lawyers and court appearances. Emma started asking why we had to go to so many important meetings and why I seemed stressed all the time. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in October. I wore my best business suit and sat at a table next to Ms. Rodriguez, watching Tyler and his attorney enter the courtroom. Tyler was dressed in an expensive-looking navy suit, and I wondered who was paying for his legal representation. Tyler's lawyer painted a picture of a reformed man who had made mistakes in his youth but was now ready to step up and be the father Emma deserved. Tyler took the stand and delivered what was clearly a rehearsed speech about how much he regretted leaving, how he'd spent years thinking about his daughter, and how he wanted to make amends. "I know I wasn't there for the first years of Emma's life," Tyler said, looking directly at the judge. "I was immature and overwhelmed, and I made the biggest mistake of my life when I walked away. But I'm not that person anymore. I have a steady job, I've been sober for 2 years, and I want to be the father Emma needs." It was all lies, of course, but Tyler had always been charming when he needed to be. Then it was my turn. Ms. Rodriguez had prepared me well, and I had documentation for everything. Bank records showing 0 child support payments, school records showing Tyler had never attended a single parent conference or school event, medical records proving I'd taken Emma to every doctor's appointment alone. "Your Honor," I said when asked to speak, Tyler had 7 years to be involved in Emma's life. He chose not to be. He missed her first steps, her first words, her first day of school. He's never taken care of her when she was sick, never helped her with homework, never tucked her into bed. The only reason he's here now is because my grandfather left me an inheritance. Emma's second-grade teacher, Mrs. Williams, testified on my behalf, confirming that Emma had never mentioned having a father and that I'd always been the sole parent listed on all school documents. But the moment that changed everything was when the judge asked to hear the exact wording of my grandfather's will. Ms. Rodriguez had suggested this strategy knowing that my grandfather had been very specific in his language. I stood up, unfolded the will, and began reading aloud to my beloved granddaughter Nevaeh, who has shown incredible strength and dedication in raising Emma alone despite being abandoned by those who should have supported her. I could see Tyler's face beginning to change as I continued reading. "Nevaeh has proven that she needs no one else to provide for Emma's welfare, education, and happiness. She has done more with less than most people accomplish with abundance. It is my honor to provide for their future as a recognition of Nevaeh's extraordinary character and as my final act of support for the granddaughter who never gave up." But then came the part that made Tyler's face turn completely pale. "This inheritance is specifically intended for Nevaeh alone to be used as she sees fit for herself and Emma, without interference from anyone who abandoned their responsibilities during the difficult early years of Emma's life." The courtroom was completely silent. Even Tyler's lawyer looked uncomfortable. The judge reviewed all the evidence, listened to all the testimony, and made his decision. "Mr. Tyler," the judge said sternly, "you voluntarily abandoned your parental responsibilities for 7 years. You provided no financial support, no emotional support, and showed no interest in your daughter's welfare until a substantial inheritance became involved. The will is clear and valid, and I see no compelling reason to modify the existing custody arrangement." Tyler's case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning he couldn't refile the same claims. The judge also ordered him to pay court costs and issued a warning about frivolous litigation. Outside the courthouse, Tyler made one last desperate attempt to approach me. "This isn't over, Nevaeh," he said, but his voice lacked the conviction it had carried before. "Yes, it is," I replied calmly. "It was over the day you walked away from your daughter." That afternoon, I filed for a restraining order to prevent Tyler from contacting Emma or me again. Ms. Rodriguez assured me that between the court ruling and the restraining order, Tyler was unlikely to cause us any more problems. A month later, Emma and I moved into my grandfather's beautiful house in Buckhead. Emma fell in love with the large backyard, immediately running around and exploring every corner of what was now her new home. "I love our new house, Mommy," Emma said that first evening as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset. "I think Great-Grandpa Joseph is watching over us from heaven." "I think so too, sweetheart," I replied, pulling her close. I used part of the inheritance to establish a trust fund for Emma's education, ensuring she'd be able to attend any college she chose, without worrying about money. The rest I invested wisely with the help of a financial advisor my grandfather had worked with for years. But the most important thing I gained wasn't the money or the house. It was the final validation that I'd been right all along. I could raise Emma alone. I could provide for her, protect her, and give her everything she needed to thrive. Sometimes the people who abandon you do you the greatest favor of your life. Tyler leaving forced me to become stronger than I ever thought possible. It taught me that I didn't need anyone else to create a good life for my daughter and myself. To every single parent out there fighting the good fight alone, remember this: your struggles today are building your child's character tomorrow. The love, dedication, and strength you show them every day is worth more than anything money can buy. Emma may not have her biological father in her life, but she has something much better. She has a mother who never gave up and a great-grandfather's love that will provide for her future long after I'm gone. She has the knowledge that she comes from a family of fighters, people who don't quit when things get tough. That's worth more than any amount of money, and it's something Tyler can never take away from us. What would you do if someone from your past suddenly reappeared, demanding a share of your good fortune? Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming challenges and finding strength you didn't know you had. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that they're stronger than they think. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the best victories come after the hardest battles. Keep fighting for what you believe in, and never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough.